What do you do when you fumble so much in college that your coach loses faith in you, and your career nearly ends before it starts? Most players would quit or transfer. Eddie George did something different. He turned those fumbles into fuel, transforming from a bench warmer into the most dominant running back in college football, winning the Heisman Trophy with 1,927 rushing yards. But that was just the beginning of a career that would make him the only back besides Jim Brown to rush for 10,000 yards without missing a start in the NFL. That journey, from liability to legend, began with one crushing moment that nearly destroyed everything. In that Illinois game, Eddie George stepped onto the field as a true freshman, carrying the hopes of Ohio State fans who expected greatness from their five-star recruit. Instead, they witnessed a nightmare that would define the early chapters of his college career. George fumbled twice inside the 5-yard line, and both fumbles turned into defensive touchdowns for Illinois. The Buckeyes lost 18-16 in a game they should have won easily. Those two fumbles changed everything. The crowd that had cheered his arrival now booed every time he touched the football. Coach John Cooper, who had believed in George's potential, suddenly questioned whether this freshman could handle the pressure of Big Ten football. The coaching staff pulled George from the game plan almost immediately. He managed just 12 more rushing attempts for the entire remainder of his freshman season, watching from the sidelines as his confidence crumbled with each passing week. Cooper later reflected on that devastating performance. "We gave him the chance to play against Illinois as a true freshman, and he had a tough game. He fumbled twice, and that led to us losing the game." The fans booed Eddie for his mistakes, but he blocked it out and continued to work hard and improve. But in those dark moments after the Illinois disaster, George felt completely alone. Whispers followed him through the locker room about whether he had what it took to play at this level. The mental toll was brutal. George had arrived at Ohio State expecting to dominate immediately, but instead found himself questioning everything about his abilities. Every practice became a test of whether coaches still trusted him with the football. The weight of expectations that had once motivated him now felt like a crushing burden threatening to end his career before it truly began. George made a decision that would define the rest of his football life. He committed to the most grueling off-season training regimen anyone had ever seen at Ohio State. He spent countless hours working on drills that other players considered basic fundamentals. While teammates relaxed during breaks, George stayed on the field practicing ball security until it became instinct. Hours of strip drills, grip work, and pressure reps no one else bothered with. Cooper later called George's work ethic the best he'd ever seen from any college football player. George would arrive at practice early and stay late, repeating the same drills over and over until muscle memory replaced conscious thought. He worked with sports psychologists to rebuild his mental approach to the game, learning to trust his abilities instead of playing scared. The transformation took time, but it was undeniable. In the 3 years following those freshman fumbles, George carried the ball over 600 times and fumbled only 6 times total. He had turned his greatest weakness into an unshakable strength through pure determination and relentless work. By his senior season, the foundation was set for something extraordinary that would silence every critic who had written him off. The doubters were still talking as George entered his senior season. Sure, he had fixed his fumbling problem, but could a player who spent most of his college career buried on the depth chart really compete for college football's most prestigious award? George answered that question immediately in the season opener against Washington, exploding for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. The performance showed the kind of breakaway speed that scouts had hoped to see since his recruitment. But the real test would come against ranked opponents who had the speed and talent to expose any weaknesses in his game. Week after week, George answered every question with his legs. The performance against Pittsburgh was impressive, as George carved up the Panthers' defense for 162 yards and another score. But these games were just appetizers for what was coming. The Illinois game represented everything George had worked for since those devastating freshman fumbles. Returning to face the same team that had humiliated him years earlier, George unleashed the most dominant single-game performance in Ohio State history. He carried the ball 36 times for 314 yards and 3 touchdowns, shattering every school record in the process. The performance was more than statistical dominance. George ran with a controlled fury that demolished Illinois defenders who tried to tackle him one-on-one. His combination of power and speed was on full display as he broke through arm tackles, outran defensive backs to the corner, and dragged multiple defenders into the end zone. George's running style made him nearly impossible to defend consistently. At 6 feet 3 inches and 235 pounds, he possessed the size to run through linebackers and the speed to outrun safeties. When defenders tried to tackle him high, George would lower his shoulder and drive through contact for extra yards. When they aimed low, his long strides and exceptional balance allowed him to stay on his feet and continue running. Against Notre Dame, this combination produced 207 yards and 2 touchdowns in a nationally televised showcase that had Heisman voters taking notice. The pressure mounted with each passing week as George's numbers climbed toward historic territory. Ohio State's championship hopes rested squarely on his shoulders, and opposing defenses began stacking 8 and 9 defenders in the box to stop him. George responded by catching 47 passes for 417 yards, a remarkable transformation for a player who had caught just 16 passes in his first 3 college seasons combined. His versatility kept defensive coordinators awake at night, trying to find ways to contain a player who seemed to have no weaknesses. George's final numbers were staggering by any measure. His 1,927 rushing yards destroyed the previous Ohio State record, while his 24 rushing touchdowns ranked among the best single-season performances in college football history. He averaged 148.2 yards per game over 13 contests, maintaining a level of excellence that few players have ever matched. The Heisman Trophy ceremony validated everything George had accomplished through years of doubt and reconstruction. His victory over Nebraska's Tommy Frazier was the closest in the award's history at that time, decided by just 264 votes. Coach John Cooper captured the magnitude of George's achievement perfectly. He came here focused and with the goal of becoming a Heisman winner, and he did just that. Now, NFL scouts had seen enough to believe George could carry that dominance to the professional level. The Houston Oilers made George the 14th overall pick in 1996, betting their franchise future on a player who had to prove that college dominance could survive the NFL's unforgiving physicality. Most rookie running backs struggle with the speed and violence of professional football, but George stepped into the Oilers' backfield and immediately looked like he belonged. His first NFL carry went for 35 yards, setting the tone for a rookie season that would announce his arrival as a legitimate star. George's 1,368 rushing yards set a franchise rookie record and earned him NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year honors, but the numbers only told part of the story. His 4.1 yards per carry average matched his career high, proving he could maintain efficiency while absorbing the punishment that comes with 20 to 30 carries per game. George's combination of size, speed, and vision made him nearly impossible for NFL defenses to handle consistently. He possessed the strength to break tackles from linebackers while maintaining the acceleration to outrun defensive backs who took bad angles. The real test of George's NFL readiness came not in his statistical production, but in his ability to stay healthy through a 16-game season. Running backs historically have the shortest careers in football because their bodies break down under constant contact. But George seemed determined to rewrite those expectations from his very first practice. He trained like missing a game was never an option, because for him, it wasn't. George's consecutive start streak became the stuff of legend in Houston and later Tennessee. He started 130 consecutive games to begin his career, a remarkable feat second only to Walter Payton's 170 consecutive starts. Players watched George practice and play through injuries that would sideline other running backs for weeks. The physical toll of carrying the ball hundreds of times per season would have destroyed most players, but George developed specific techniques to protect his body and extend his career. He incorporated yoga into his routine starting in 1997, using the practice to address weak spots and maintain flexibility that kept him healthy. George's running style also helped preserve his body, as he learned when to absorb contact and when to avoid unnecessary hits by getting out of bounds or sliding down. Recovery wasn't an afterthought. It was part of the game plan, with George exploring every available option to keep his body functioning at peak performance. When George reached 10,000 career rushing yards without missing a start, he joined an exclusive club with just one other member, Jim Brown. Only 2 NFL backs in history have accomplished this feat, proving that consistency and availability were just as valuable as pure talent in building a legendary career. Coaches knew they could count on George every Sunday, regardless of the weather, the opponent, or the physical punishment he had absorbed the previous week. George's reliability became the foundation of everything the franchise built offensively during his career. That foundation would soon be tested when championship dreams came within reach. The 1999 Tennessee Titans had completed their transformation from the struggling Houston Oilers into legitimate championship contenders, and George stood at the center of their Super Bowl dreams. The franchise had found its identity in Nashville, with George's punishing ground game providing the foundation for everything the Titans accomplished. His 16 total touchdowns that season, including 14 rushing scores, had powered the team's offensive attack throughout their championship run. When they earned their spot in Super Bowl 34 against the St. Louis Rams, George knew he would face the ultimate test against one of the most explosive offenses in NFL history. The Rams entered the game as heavy favorites, powered by quarterback Kurt Warner and receiver Isaac Bruce, in what fans called the greatest show on turf. Their high-octane passing attack averaged over 32 points per game during the regular season, creating a massive challenge for the Titans. George understood that his team's only chance for victory required controlling the clock and keeping Warner off the field through sustained drives that relied on his ability to wear down the Rams' defense. George answered the challenge with a performance that proved his championship mettle. He found the end zone twice during the game, punishing Rams defenders who tried to bring him down with arm tackles. His first touchdown came on a powerful one-yard plunge that showcased his ability to deliver in short yardage situations when the game was on the line. The second score demonstrated his versatility, as George caught a pass from Steve McNair and fought through multiple tacklers to reach the end zone. The back-and-forth battle that followed became an instant classic, with both teams trading scores throughout the game. George's 95 rushing yards provided the steady foundation that kept the Titans competitive against the Rams' aerial assault. Every carry mattered as George methodically moved the chains and controlled the tempo, giving his team legitimate hope for pulling off one of the biggest upsets in Super Bowl history. As the fourth quarter unfolded, the pressure mounted with each possession. The Titans trailed 23-16 with just over 2 minutes remaining, needing one final drive to force overtime or claim the championship outright. The final drive began with promise as the Titans methodically moved down the field. With 6 seconds left, the Titans had one final shot from the Rams' 10-yard line. McNair took the snap and fired a pass to Kevin Dyson, who caught it in stride at the 5 and sprinted for glory. Then 1 yard short, everything stopped. Rams linebacker Mike Jones made a tackle that ended the game and the Titans' title hopes. 1 yard. That's all that separated Eddie George from a Super Bowl ring. After 95 bruising yards and 2 touchdowns, he watched the season and his shot at history end 1 yard short. For Eddie George, 1 yard short of a ring wasn't the end. It was the start of something even bigger. Most athletes struggle with life after football, but George was just getting started. When George retired in 2004 after 8 NFL seasons, he faced the same challenge that defeats many professional athletes, finding purpose and success beyond the sport that defined their entire identity. While some former players drift aimlessly or chase the spotlight through reality television, George approached his transition with the same methodical preparation that made him a football star. George enrolled at Northwestern University's prestigious Kellogg School of Management, understanding that his athletic accomplishments alone wouldn't guarantee future success. He graduated with his MBA in 2009, applying the same dedication to academics that had transformed him from a fumble-prone freshman into a Heisman Trophy winner. George recognized that football skills weren't directly transferable to the workforce, so he immersed himself in marketing, accounting, and business practices that would serve as the foundation for his next chapter. His entrepreneurial spirit led to the creation of Edge, a firm providing design solutions for architects and engineers. This venture allowed George to apply his passion for landscape architecture, a field he had studied at Ohio State before football consumed his life. The business demonstrated his ability to translate the drive and vision that made him successful on the field into creating lasting value in the corporate world. In 2016, George shocked everyone by starring as Billy Flynn in the Broadway production of Chicago. This wasn't a publicity stunt or celebrity cameo. George had spent years honing his craft through community theater performances in Nashville, proving his commitment to excellence extended far beyond athletics. After his Broadway debut, George toured in the same role, showcasing his versatility and willingness to embrace challenges that terrified most people. George established the Edward George Wealth Management Group, partnering with his financial advisor of nearly 20 years, Greg Eastman. As managing partner, George focuses on managing money for clients including athletes and entertainers who face the same transition challenges he had navigated. This venture leveraged his personal brand and business education to create lasting financial success, while helping others avoid the pitfalls that destroy many professional athletes financially. George became a vocal advocate for mental health awareness among athletes, drawing from his own experiences to help others navigate the psychological challenges of professional sports. He publicly shared his struggles post-retirement and how he leaned on counseling and education to heal, removing the stigma around mental health and encouraging athletes to seek support when needed. This advocacy highlights his understanding that true leadership means helping others overcome the same obstacles he faced. In April 2021, George returned to football as head coach at Tennessee State University, signing a 5-year contract. In 2024, he led Tennessee State to a Big South OVC title and was named Coach of the Year, completing one of the most remarkable second acts in football. His success validated the transition from player to coach and proved that his competitive excellence translates perfectly to developing the next generation of players. Through every challenge and career change, George demonstrated that true champions never stop competing. They just find new arenas to conquer. Eddie George's journey from fumble-prone college player to NFL Ironman to championship coach proves that resilience creates opportunities across every arena of life. Those devastating freshman fumbles at Ohio State could have ended his career before it started, but George transformed that weakness into unshakable strength through relentless work. The same perseverance that powered his football comeback drove his success in business, theater, and coaching. His 2024 conference championship at Tennessee State completed a remarkable full-circle redemption, showing that the principles of hard work and adaptation apply whether you're carrying a football or leading a team from the sidelines. Thanks for watching. If stories like Eddie George's inspire you, ones where grit beats the odds, hit that subscribe button. We've got more legends who earned every single yard coming your way.